The crystal wine glass trembled in my hand as I watched my mother-in-law's perfectly manicured fingers drum against the mahogany dining table. Every tap felt like a countdown to my inevitable humiliation. So, Eliana, Paula's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. How's that little online shop of yours doing? Still selling those, what do you call them? Ethnic accessories. I'm Eliana Santiago, and 3 months ago, I quit my corporate job to launch my own boutique. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be a celebration of my first successful quarter. Instead, it had become another stage for Paula's theatrical disapproval. Actually, we've had a great month, I said, straightening my spine. Our handcrafted bags are selling well, and we're planning to expand into... Darling, Paula interrupted, reaching for her wine, wouldn't it be better to focus on something more substantial? Rhett's firm is always looking for marketing professionals. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. Mum, Eliana's business is substantial. She's already turning a profit. A profit? Paula laughed, the sound echoing through her massive dining room. What's that, dear? Enough to buy a new handbag from a real designer. Lauren, my sister-in-law, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I actually bought one of Eliana's bags. The craftsmanship is incredible. Paula's eyes narrowed. Lauren, please, you're just encouraging this hobby. It's not a hobby, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We've caught the attention of several major influencers and... Oh yes, those internet people. Paula waved her hand dismissively. Speaking of which, I had lunch with Brian Fernandez yesterday. You know, the investor you've been trying to meet with. My stomach dropped. Brian was my potential ticket to scaling the business. I'd been trying to get a meeting with him for weeks. What did you tell him? Rhett asked, his fork clattering against his plate. Only the truth, darling, that while Eliana's enthusiasm is charming, her business model lacks the sophistication needed for serious consideration. Paula dabbed her lips with her napkin. I couldn't let him waste his time. The room spun, weeks of work, carefully crafted presentations, all potentially ruined because of one lunch. You had no right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I had every right. The Webbers have a reputation to maintain. We can't have family members running around playing shopkeeper with borrowed cultural trinkets. Borrowed? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. These designs are based on my grandmother's heritage. Each piece tells a story of, oh, please spare us the immigrant success story. Paula rolled her eyes. It's all very touching, but this isn't some feel-good movie, Eliana. This is real life. Rhett stood beside me. That's enough, Mom. Sit down, both of you. You're making a scene. Paula turned to the butler hovering nearby. James, bring out the dessert. My phone buzzed. An email notification. I opened it under the table, my hands shaking. Dear Ms. Santiago, after careful consideration, we regret to inform you that we'll have to cancel our upcoming order. Another buzz. Another cancellation. Paula's smile grew wider as she watched my face. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly what was happening. Everything all right, dear? You look pale. Perhaps the stress of running a business is too much for you. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Rhett closed behind. Lauren called out, Eliana, wait! In the foyer, Rhett caught my arm. I'm so sorry, I'll talk to her. Talk to her. I laughed bitterly. She's systematically destroying everything I've built. Those cancellations aren't a coincidence, Rhett. She's been calling my clients. We'll fix this, he promised, pulling me close. From the dining room, Paula's voice carried clearly. She'll thank me one day. Sometimes we need to be cruel to be kind. That's when something inside me snapped. The fear, the intimidation, the constant need to prove myself. It all crystallized into something harder, sharper. I pulled away from Rhett and walked back into the dining room. Paula looked up, surprised by my return. You know what, Paula? You're right about one thing. This isn't a feel-good movie. But you've made a serious mistake. Oh? She raised an eyebrow. And what's that? You assumed I'd break, that I'd crawl back to corporate life with my tail between my legs. But here's the thing about my grandmother's heritage. We don't break. We transform. I turned to leave, but not before catching Lauren's small smile and Paula's momentarily uncertain expression. In the car, my phone buzzed again. Another cancellation. But instead of despair, I felt something else. Determination. Paula Weber had just given me the greatest gift possible. A reason to succeed that went beyond profit margins and sales figures. She wanted to play games. Fine. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had nothing left to lose. And that made me more dangerous than she could imagine. My grandmother's weathered hands traced the intricate patterns on her old shawl as I sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by my laptop, sketch papers, and a rapidly cooling cup of café con leche. Abuela, tell me again about the pattern, I said, pencil poised over my sketchbook. The one from the Resistance. Francesca's eyes sparkled with memories. Ah, mi amor. These weren't just pretty designs. Each pattern was a message, a secret code for those who knew how to read it. This spiral here? It meant safe passage. The broken line? Danger ahead. I sketched frantically, my mind racing with possibilities. 3 days had passed since Paula's dinner party disaster, and I'd already lost 60% of my confirmed orders. But sitting here, listening to my grandmother's stories, I knew exactly what I had to do. My phone rang. Rhett. Hey, love. How's the damage control going? It's not, I admitted, adding shading to my sketch, but I have a different plan. I'm liquidating our savings. Silence crackled over the line. Eliana, that's everything we have. I know. But I'm creating something new, something that matters. I looked at my grandmother, who was now humming softly as she folded her shawl. Remember how you always said I should tell my story? Well, I'm finally ready. Paula will hate it, he said, but I could hear the smile in his voice. That's just a bonus. After hanging up, I showed my sketches to Francesca. Her eyes widened. Mi niña, these are the patterns from the Resistance, but different. Modern interpretations, I explained. Each piece will tell a story of survival, of fighting back, but with a twist that speaks to today's world. The doorbell rang. Lauren stood on the porch, clutching a thick manila envelope. Can I come in? She asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. I have something you need to see. Inside, Lauren spread documents across the coffee table, displacing my sketches. I found these in Mom's study, she said. She's been embezzling from her own charity for years. The numbers don't add up, and these offshore accounts. She pointed to several highlighted figures. It's bad, Eliana. Really bad. My hands shook as I examined the papers. Why are you showing me this? Lauren's eyes met mine. Because I'm tired of her destroying people. What she did to your business? It's not the first time. She ruins anyone who threatens her social standing. Francesca hobbled over, peering at the documents. Sometimes, she said softly, the greatest revolution is simply telling the truth. I stared at the evidence of Paula's fraud, then at my sketches. An idea began to form. Lauren, I need your help. Both of you. I pulled out my phone and dialed my supplier. Hi, Maria. Remember that crazy idea we discussed? I'm in. All in. The next 2 weeks became a blur of activity. I sold everything that wasn't essential, poured every penny into materials and production. Francesca's stories became the heart of each design, while Lauren secretly gathered more evidence of Paula's misconduct. My small workshop transformed into a war room of creativity. Every piece in the collection carried a hidden message, patterns that spoke of resistance, of standing up to oppression, but reimagined for modern women fighting modern battles. You're crazy, Rhett said one night watching me work, but I've never been more proud. Even though I'm risking everything. He picked up one of the finished bags, admiring the intricate pattern. Especially because of that. You're fighting back with beauty, with truth. It's brilliant. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Mum's planning something big, be careful. As if on cue, an email arrived from my remaining major client cancelling their order. My hands trembled as I opened my banking app, checking our account balance. The numbers made my stomach lurch. We're almost out of money, I whispered. Rhett wrapped his arms around me. Then we've got nothing left to lose. Francesca, who had been quietly observing from her chair, spoke up. When they took everything from us, that's when we became most dangerous, because then we fought with our whole hearts. I looked at my grandmother, this tiny woman who had survived a revolution, who had carried her stories in secret patterns and whispered them to me at bedtime. Then I looked at my collection, her legacy transformed into something new and powerful. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Is this Eliana? Brian Fernandez here. I've been hearing some interesting things about your new collection. I caught my breath. Mr. Fernandez, Let me be clear, he cut in. Paula Weber has been insistent about keeping me away from your business, which frankly only made me more curious. I'd like to see what you're working on. Tomorrow, if possible. After hanging up, I stood in my workshop, surrounded by my grandmother's stories made manifest in leather and silk. Paula thought she could silence me, erase me. But she'd forgotten something crucial. Some stories refused to stay buried. I picked up one of the bags, running my fingers over the pattern that meant revolution is coming. Ready or not, Paula, I whispered. Here we go. Brian Fernandez's office felt like a fortress of glass and steel, 30 stories above the city. I clutched my sample bag tighter as his assistant led me through the doors. These patterns, Brian said, not bothering with pleasantries as he examined the bag. They're unlike anything I've seen in the market. Tell me about them. I placed my grandmother's shawl on his desk. Each design tells a story of resistance. This one, for example. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smirked. That's the third time Paula has called in the last hour. She seems very concerned about our meeting. I'm not surprised, I said, keeping my voice steady. She's invested a lot of energy in destroying my business. Yes, she mentioned something about protecting me from a bad investment. He set the phone aside. What she didn't mention was that your initial sales figures were impressive. Very impressive. A knock at the door interrupted us. Lauren burst in, ignoring the protesting assistant. Sorry I'm late, she said, dropping into the chair beside me. Traffic was terrible. Brian raised an eyebrow. Ms. Weber, this is unexpected. I'm here to support my sister-in-law, Lauren announced, pulling out a tablet. And to show you something interesting about my mother's charitable foundation. The one you've been considering partnering with? His expression sharpened. Go on. Lauren pulled up the documents she'd discovered, explaining the discrepancies while I sat in stunned silence. I hadn't expected her to be so bold. These are serious allegations, Brian said, studying the numbers. They're not allegations, Lauren replied. They're facts. Mum's been stealing from her own charity for years, using it as her personal piggy bank while pretending to help underprivileged women. Brian leaned back, steepling his fingers. And you're showing me this because? Because, I cut in, we're offering you a better investment opportunity. One with actual impact. I pulled out my business plan, spreading it across his desk. Each piece in my collection will partner with a legitimate women's organization. Real help for real women, with complete transparency. Plus, Lauren added, the designs are incredible, and they come with a built-in market of women who are tired of being silenced. Brian's phone buzzed again. Paula's name flashed on the screen. Should I take this? He asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. Actually, Lauren said, put it on speaker. He did. Brian, darling. Paula's voice filled the room. Please tell me you haven't met with that girl yet. Her little ethnic crafts project is beneath you. Now about my foundation's fundraiser next month. Paula, Brian interrupted, I'm in a meeting. With Eliana and Lauren. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren? Paula's voice cracked. What are you doing there? The right thing, Mom. Finally. Brian ended the call. Well, ladies, you've certainly made this interesting. He picked up one of my bags again. Tell me more about your production capacity. An hour later, Lauren and I stood in the elevator, still processing what had happened. I can't believe he's investing, I whispered, and that you came. Lauren gripped my hand. I've spent my whole life watching Mom crush people's dreams. I couldn't let her do it to you, too. My phone chimed with a text from Rhett. Mum's on the warpath. She knows about the meeting, coming home early. She's going to disown you, I told Lauren. Probably, she agreed. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I don't care. We stepped out of the elevator into chaos. Paula stood in the lobby, her perfect makeup unable to hide her fury. How dare you, she hissed at Lauren. Conspiring against your own mother? No, Mom. How dare you? How dare you steal from charity? How dare you hurt everyone who doesn't fit your perfect image? Security guards were moving our way. Paula noticed too and lowered her voice. You have no idea what you've done. I'll cut you off. Both of you will be nothing. I stepped between them. That's where you're wrong, Paula. We're not nothing. We're everything you're afraid of. Women who won't be silenced. You'll regret this, she spat, but her voice trembled. No, Lauren said quietly. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner. As Paula stormed out, Brian appeared behind us. Impressive show, he said. I trust you'll bring that same fire to our partnership. The collection launches in 3 weeks, I confirmed. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it. He handed me a check. Your first investment installment. Don't make me regret this. Outside, Lauren and I stood in the sunshine, still shaking from the confrontation. What now? She asked. I looked at the check in my hand, then at my phone where pictures of the collection's samples waited to be posted. Now, we launch a revolution, one handbag at a time. Lauren linked her arm through mine. Mum's going to try to stop us. Let her try, I said, thinking of my grandmother's resistance patterns. Some stories are stronger than fear. We walked away from the building, leaving Paula's world of artificial perfection behind. Ahead of us lay 3 weeks of hard work, but for the first time, I felt truly unstoppable. We had the truth on our side, and as my grandmother always said, truth was the strongest pattern of all. The morning of the launch, I arrived at the venue at dawn, my heart pounding as I unlocked the doors. The gallery space we'd rented was perfect, industrial chic with exposed brick walls that made the perfect backdrop for my collection. Looking good, boss, Maria, my lead seamstress, called out as she wheeled in the first rack of bags, though you might want to check social media. My stomach dropped as I pulled out my phone. The trending hashtag made my blood run cold. Fake designer. It's everywhere, Lauren said, rushing in with her tablet. Anonymous sources claiming you stole the designs that they're mass-produced knockoffs from overseas factories. I scrolled through the posts, each one worse than the last. Paula? Has to be, Lauren agreed. She's been meeting with her PR team all week. My phone rang. Brian. Tell me these allegations aren't true, he said without preamble. They're lies, I said, my voice firm. Every piece is original, inspired by my grandmother's resistance patterns. I can prove it. You'd better. The press is already asking questions. After hanging up, I called Rhett. Your mother's really done it this time, I said when he answered. I know. I'm with her now. He paused. She's hosting a press breakfast, talking about the importance of authentic design and cultural appreciation. I nearly dropped the phone. She's what? Says she's protecting the industry from frauds. Eliana, she's got photos of similar-looking bags from other designers. But those designs came from my grandmother. They're family patterns. Then prove it, he said simply. I looked around the gallery where my team was setting up, at the centerpiece display still empty, waiting for the star of the collection. Abuela, I said into the phone, I need you. Now, bring everything. 2 hours later, Francesca arrived with a trunk full of history. Together, we transformed one corner of the gallery into a living timeline. Her original shawls, photographs, documented stories of the resistance movements, all leading to my modern interpretations. Mi amor, she said, arranging her shawls. Your mother-in-law doesn't understand. These patterns aren't just designs, they're survival stories. The first reporters started arriving, drawn by Paula's allegations. But instead of finding a scandal, they found my grandmother holding court, captivating them with tales of revolution and resistance, showing how each pattern evolved from necessity to fashion. This spiral, she told a mesmerized journalist, it meant safe passage during the uprising. Now my granddaughter has transformed it into a symbol of modern women's journey. See how it flows into the bag's structure? Lauren burst in mid-afternoon. Mom's furious. Her breakfast backfired. Everyone's talking about the fascinating heritage angle of your collection. Good, I said, adjusting a display, because we're about to give them something bigger to talk about. I pulled out the centerpiece of the collection, a large tote bag with an intricate pattern that, at first glance, looked purely decorative. But embedded within the design were numbers, dates, and amounts matching the records Lauren had found of Paula's embezzlement. "Is that what I think it is?" Lauren whispered. The truth hidden in plain sight, just like my grandmother's resistance patterns. The gallery filled as launch time approached. Brian arrived with potential buyers. Fashion bloggers circulated, photographing everything. Even Rhett showed up, looking both proud and nervous. Then Paula walked in. She moved through the crowd like a shark, her designer heels clicking on the concrete floor. "Quite the little museum you've created," she said, eyeing the heritage display. "Though I doubt anyone's actually buying." "Actually," Brian stepped forward, "we've had significant pre-orders. The heritage angle is resonating strongly with consumers tired of soulless luxury brands." Paula's smile tightened. "How nice. Though I wonder about the authenticity of these so-called resistance patterns." "Why don't you ask me yourself?" Francesca appeared beside us, her small frame radiating dignity. "After all, I lived them." The crowd quieted, sensing drama. "You know, Paula," I said, leading her to the centerpiece display, "some patterns tell stories we'd rather keep hidden, like this one." I watched her face as she examined the bag, saw the exact moment she recognized the numbers woven into the design. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the crowd, "I'd like to tell you about this special piece. It's inspired by my grandmother's belief that truth, like beauty, deserves to be shared." Paula grabbed my arm. "Think carefully about what you're doing." I looked at her perfectly manicured hand on my arm, then at my grandmother's weathered fingers tracing her resistance patterns, and finally at Lauren, who nodded slightly. "The truth is," I continued, my voice carrying across the gallery, "every pattern tells a story. The question is, which stories are we brave enough to tell?" Paula's hand fell away as cameras flashed. In that moment, looking at her face, I realized the launch wasn't just about my collection anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet, to play small, to accept less than she deserved. And I was done being quiet. The morning after the launch, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Fashion blogs were calling the collection revolutionary. Major retailers wanted meetings. But the message that made my hands shake came from Paula's lawyer. "Cease and desist," I read aloud to Lauren over coffee. "Any interpretation of financial records in your designs constitutes defamation," Lauren snorted. "Defamation requires the statements to be false. Those numbers are real." "She's scared," Rhett said, joining us at my kitchen table. "The charity gala is next week and ticket sales are down. People are asking questions." My phone lit up with another call. A morning show wanted an interview. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Brian strode in, tablet in hand. "Have you seen the numbers? Pre-orders have tripled since last night, but that's not why I'm here." He turned the tablet toward us. "Look who's trending." A video was going viral. Paula at my launch, her face contorting as she examined the centerpiece bag. Someone had captured the exact moment she recognized her own fraud woven into the pattern. "The internet is calling it the guilty look," Brian said. "It's becoming a meme." "Mom's going to lose it," Lauren whispered. Right on cue, my phone rang, Paula's number. "Put it on speaker," Rhett said. I did. "You think you're clever," Paula's voice trembled with rage. "But you've made a terrible mistake. The gala is next week. Every important person in this city will be there. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never touched a sewing machine." "Is that a threat, Paula?" "It's a promise. By the way, I've invited several intellectual property lawyers. They're very interested in examining your grandmother's so-called original patterns. The line went dead. She wouldn't, Lauren gasped. Going after Abuela's patterns? That's low even for her. I grabbed my keys. Come on, we need to see Francesca. We found my grandmother in her garden calmly drinking tea. When I told her about Paola's threat, she laughed. Mi amor, let her bring her lawyers. I have something to show you. She disappeared into her house, returning with a dusty box. I was waiting for the right time. Inside were dozens of yellow documents, official patents and design registrations dating back decades. You registered the patents? I breathed. Of course. When we came to this country, I learned quickly about protecting what's yours. She smiled. Your mother-in-law isn't the first bully I've faced. Brian, who'd followed us, was already photographing the documents. This changes everything. These registrations, they're gold. And the timing. What timing? I asked. The fashion world loves drama, he said. Paula's gala is next week. What if we time our next move perfectly? Lauren's eyes lit up. The gala invitations haven't gone out yet. Mum's been delayed choosing the perfect design. I might have an idea, I said slowly, pulling out my sketchbook. But I'll need your help, Lauren. All of your help. Over the next few days, we worked in secret. Lauren provided the guest list. Brian connected me with a high-end printer. Francesca shared more stories, more patterns, each one now proven legally mine. The night before the gala invitations were supposed to go out, Lauren called in a panic. Mom's suspicious. She's asking questions about the printer delay. Is everything ready? I asked. Yes. The invitations are perfect. Each one has your special pattern embedded in the design. When the story breaks during the gala, everyone will already have the evidence in their hands, I finished. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rhett found me in my workshop tracing patterns on scratch paper. Having second thoughts? He asked. No. Yes. Maybe. I looked up at him. This will destroy her. She tried to destroy you first, he reminded me. Multiple times. I know, but my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Mom just approved the invitations. They're going out tomorrow morning. Last chance to back out. I thought about Paula's smug face at that first dinner party, her deliberate dismantling of my business, her threats against my grandmother's legacy. No backing out, I texted back. Rhett wrapped his arms around me. Whatever happens, I'm with you. The next morning, 500 invitations went out to the city's elite. 500 pieces of evidence disguised as elegant party invitations, each bearing a pattern that told the true story of Paula's charity fraud. My phone rang. Brian. It's done, he said. The invitations are delivered, and I've just confirmed our spot at the gala. Front row seats to watch it all unfold. I hung up and walked to my window, watching the morning sun rise over the city. In mansions and penthouses across town, Paula's carefully curated guest list was receiving their invitations, unknowingly holding the keys to her downfall in their manicured hands. 1 week, I whispered to myself, 1 week until the truth comes out in the most public way possible. My phone buzzed again, a message from Paula. The invitations are perfect, dear. Perhaps you're learning something about class after all. I smiled at the irony. Yes, Paula, I thought. I've learned quite a lot about class. And next week, you'll learn about consequences. The ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and Paula's carefully curated guest list. I adjusted my dress, one of my own designs, naturally, and watched the crowd through the service entrance. Ready? Lauren appeared beside me, stunning in midnight blue. Mum's about to make her entrance. Are the accountants here? She nodded. Front row, just like you asked. They've reviewed all the evidence. They're just waiting for the signal. The crowd hushed as Paula swept in, resplendent in designer couture. She took the stage with practiced grace, tapping the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we celebrate 10 years of our foundation's work. She paused, scanning the crowd. Her smile faltered when she spotted me. Work that has touched countless lives. I checked my watch. Any minute now. If you'll all take out your invitations, Paula continued, you'll notice a special design element, a pattern that represents our commitment to— Excuse me, a voice called out. An elderly man in an expensive suit stood up, invitation in hand. Could you explain these numbers woven into the pattern? Paula's face went blank. Numbers. Yes, another guest chimed in. They look like account transfers. Quite substantial ones. The whispers started. All around the ballroom, people were examining their invitations more closely, phones out, comparing notes. This can't be right, someone said loudly. These dates match unauthorized withdrawals from the Foundation's accounts. Paula's hands gripped the podium. I'm sure there's some mistake. No mistake, Mrs. Weber. One of the accountants stood up. These numbers match exactly with our investigation's findings. Funds meant for women's education programs, diverted to personal accounts. The whispers turned to murmurs. Phones were lighting up everywhere as guests photographed their invitations. This is absurd, Paula announced, but her voice shook. These invitations were designed by… She looked directly at me. I stood up slowly. By me, I said clearly. Using my grandmother's resistance patterns, the same ones you tried to discredit, except this time they're telling a modern story of corruption. Security, Paula called out. Remove her. I wouldn't, Brian stood up. Not unless you want to add assault charges to the fraud allegations. Paula's perfect composure cracked. Lauren, darling, help Mommy explain. Explain what, Mom? Lauren's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. How you stole from your own charity. How you used that money to maintain your social status while destroying anyone who threatened it. I did it for you. Paula's voice rose hysterically. Everything I did was to maintain our position, our influence. No, Lauren said quietly. You did it for yourself. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd been invited to cover the gala were suddenly conducting a very different kind of interview. Phones were ringing as board members called their lawyers. And in the middle of it all, Paula stood frozen at the podium. I made my way toward her, but Rhett got there first. Mum, he said softly, it's over. Paula's face crumpled. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, raw fear in the eyes of a woman who'd always been so carefully controlled. You don't understand, she whispered. Without this, without my reputation, I'm nothing. Something twisted in my chest. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? To see her broken, humiliated, just as she'd tried to humiliate me. But watching her stand there, her perfect world crashing down, I felt no triumph, only a hollow sadness. Mrs. Weber? A police officer appeared beside her. We need you to come with us. As they led her away, she turned to me one last time. I hope you're happy now. I'm not, I said honestly. But maybe that's the difference between us. The media frenzy lasted for hours. By midnight, Juice Charity Gate scandal was trending nationwide. Lauren was speaking with Foundation board members about emergency restructuring. Brian was handling press inquiries about our partnership. I found myself on the hotel's terrace away from the chaos. Rhett joined me, loosening his tie. You okay? He asked. I thought this would feel different, I admitted. More satisfying. Because you're not like her, he said simply. Your grandmother's patterns weren't just about resistance. They were about survival. About building something better. My phone buzzed. A message from Francesca. Remember, mi amor, true victory isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in building something they can't tear down. I looked back through the glass doors at the scattered remains of Paula's gala. At Lauren, strong and capable, already working to save the Foundation's mission. At the guests examining my designs with new interest, seeing the power of patterns that told the truth. So what now? Rhett asked. I squeezed his hand, thinking of all the women who could be helped by a properly run foundation, of all the stories still waiting to be told through my designs. Now, I said, we build something better. Inside, the chaos continued, but out here, Under the stars, I finally understood. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemy's world, it's in creating a better one of your own. 3 days after the gala, I stood outside the county jail, my heart pounding. The guard led me through security to a stark visiting room where Paula sat, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with her perfectly maintained hair. "Come to gloat?" she asked as I sat down. "No, I came to make you an offer." She laughed bitterly. "What could you possibly offer me now? You've taken everything. Actually, I'm offering to give something back." I placed a folder on the table between us. The foundation. That got her attention. "Lauren and I have been working with the board. They're willing to drop some of the charges if you agree to our terms." "Which are?" "Step down completely. Let us restructure the foundation with full transparency. And," I took a deep breath, "work with us to make it what it should have been all along." Paula's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. "You want me to work with you? You have connections we need. Real relationships with donors. Knowledge of how these circles work. Use that for good this time." "And why would I do that?" "Because your other option is fighting federal fraud charges. Your choice." She studied me for a long moment. "You're nothing like what I expected, you know. When Rhett first brought you home, I thought you were just another social climber." "Maybe that's been your problem all along," I said. "You see everyone as either a threat or a tool." The door opened and Lauren walked in. Paula's composure cracked slightly. "Hi, Mom," Lauren said softly. "Lauren, darling, you look different." "I feel different. Stronger." Lauren sat beside me. "We've been going through the Foundation's records. You actually had some amazing ideas in the beginning, before it became about status and power." Paula's hands trembled slightly. "It was never supposed to—" She stopped, composing herself. "What exactly are you proposing?" I pulled out the paperwork. A new board structure. Lauren as executive director. You as a special advisor, once the legal issues are resolved. And a completely new mission focusing on women entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. Using my designs, I added. Each piece telling a story of transformation. Real women's stories. Paula picked up the papers, scanning them with practiced eyes. "This could actually work," she murmured. "The donor base would love the redemption angle." "This isn't about angles," Lauren said firmly. "It's about doing something meaningful." A guard announced visiting time was ending. Paula handed back the papers. "I'll have my lawyer review these." As we stood to leave, she called out, "Eliana?" I turned. "Your grandmother's patterns. They really are extraordinary." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Outside the jail, Lauren hugged me tight. "Thank you for giving her a chance." "She's still your mother," I said, "and maybe she can learn to be a better one." My phone buzzed, Brian calling. "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. Lauren and I rushed to her car, flipping on the radio. The story was everywhere. Fashion industry rallies behind emerging designers' anti-corruption collection. "The orders are pouring in," Brian said. "Everyone wants the bags that took down a corrupt empire. But that's not all. Major retailers are asking about your full line, the one with your grandmother's original patterns." I looked at Lauren, who was grinning. "Think bigger," she said. That evening, I gathered everyone at my grandmother's house. Rhett, Lauren, Brian, and most importantly, Francesca herself. "I have an idea," I announced, spreading out fresh sketches on the dining table. "What if we combine the Foundation's new mission with my designs, each piece created in partnership with a woman entrepreneur, telling their story through patterns?" "A mentorship program," Lauren added excitedly, "connecting established businesses with startups." "Using Mom's network for good," Rhett nodded. Brian was already typing on his tablet. "The press will love it. Redemption, innovation, social impact. It's perfect." But I was watching my grandmother, who had been quietly examining my sketches. "Abuela, what do you think?" She picked up one of the drawings, a design that incorporated both her resistance patterns and modern elements. "When I created these patterns," she said slowly, "they were about survival, about keeping hope alive in dark times." She smiled. "But you, mi amor, you've made them about thriving, about helping others rise. Is that okay? I asked softly. She cupped my face in her weathered hands. It's better than okay. It's exactly what they were meant to become. My phone chimed with a message from Paula's lawyer. She was accepting our offer. Well, Brian said, raising his coffee cup, here's to new patterns. To new stories, Lauren added. To second chances, Rhett smiled. I looked around at this unlikely family we'd created, my husband, his sister, my grandmother, our allies, and felt something settle in my heart. The patterns of our lives were shifting, weaving together into something stronger and more beautiful than before. To transformation, I said, and we all raised our cups to that. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh paint through the open windows of our new flagship store. I adjusted the display of handcrafted bags, each one telling a different entrepreneur's story through its patterns. The reporters are here, Lauren called from the front, and Mom's car just pulled up. My hands trembled slightly as I straightened the centerpiece, a recreation of my grandmother's original shawl, now transformed into a modern messenger bag, the pattern that started it all. Paula entered first, looking elegant but subdued in one of my designs, a silk scarf featuring a pattern that meant redemption in my grandmother's code. The ankle monitor beneath her pants leg served as a humble reminder of consequences still being paid. The place looks magnificent, she said, running her fingers along a display, though perhaps the lighting could be adjusted to— Mom, Lauren warned. Paula caught herself. Sorry, old habits. The store filled quickly with journalists, photographers, and most importantly, the women from our mentorship program. Each one stood proudly beside the designs they'd helped create, ready to share their stories. Francesca arrived last, supported by Rhett. She paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. Mi niña, she whispered, tears in her eyes. Look what you've built. Brian stepped forward, tapping a glass for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand opening of Pattern Revolution's flagship store. But this is more than just a boutique. It's the home base for our foundation's mentorship program. I took the microphone, my voice steady. Every piece you see here represents a collaboration between established designers and emerging entrepreneurs. Each pattern tells a story of transformation. Like this one, Paula stepped forward, surprising everyone. This scarf I'm wearing, it represents my own journey. From someone who used power to crush others, to learning how to lift them up instead, the crowd murmured. This wasn't in the script. My daughter and daughter-in-law taught me something valuable, Paula continued. True influence isn't about maintaining status. It's about creating opportunity. Lauren squeezed my hand as Paula turned to us. I'm sorry, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. For everything I did to hurt you both. A photographer's flash captured the moment. Paula Weber, humbled but dignified, extending an olive branch in front of the world. And now, Brian jumped in smoothly, I'd like to introduce our first group of mentees. One by one, women stepped forward to share their stories. A refugee who designed bags incorporating traditional crafts from her homeland. A domestic violence survivor whose patterns symbolized breaking free. A former inmate whose designs represented second chances. This is real power, I whispered to Paula, who stood beside me. Not what you can take from others, but what you can help them build. She nodded, dabbing at her eyes with the corner of her scarf. I'm beginning to understand that. The event culminated with Francesca demonstrating how to read the resistance patterns, teaching a new generation the secret language of survival and hope. Journalists scribbled frantically, cameras flashed, and social media lit up with images of my grandmother's weathered hands tracing patterns that had once saved lives. As the crowd thinned, a young woman approached me clutching a portfolio. I've been following your story, she said nervously. I have some designs, patterns from my own culture. Come, I led her to the consultation area. Tell me your story. Later that night, after the cameras left and the signs were turned off, our small family gathered in the store. Lauren and Paula sat together, tentatively discussing foundation plans. Rhett and Brian reviewed sales figures. Francesca dozed in our custom-designed reading nook. I stood in the center, surrounded by the physical manifestation of our journey. Patterns of resistance transformed into symbols of progress. Stories of pain turned into testimonies of triumph. "Penny for your thoughts?" Rhett asked, wrapping his arms around me. "I was just thinking about that dinner party," I said, "when Paula first tried to destroy my business. How it felt like the end of everything. And now? Now I realize it was just the beginning of something bigger than revenge or success." "Speaking of beginnings," Lauren called out, "Mom has an announcement." Paula stood, smoothing her scarf. "I've decided to donate my house for the Foundation's new training center." "The house?" I gasped. "But that's your pride and joy." "It was," she admitted. "But I'm learning to take pride in different things now." Francesca stirred from her nap. "Ah, the strongest pattern of all, transformation." I looked around at these people who had become my unlikely team. At Paula, who was learning to channel her influence for good. At Lauren, who had found her strength. At my grandmother, whose resistance patterns had evolved into symbols of empowerment. The store's lights dimmed automatically, casting gentle shadows that made the patterns seem to dance across the walls. Each design told a story, of survival, of change, of hope. But together they told an even bigger story, that sometimes the most beautiful patterns emerge from the darkest threads. "Ready to go home?" Rhett asked. "Actually," I smiled, pulling out my sketchbook, "I have some new ideas I want to work on. Because that's the thing about patterns, they never really end. They just keep evolving, weaving new stories, creating new possibilities. And this was just the beginning of ours."